Hello, today I am joined by Irene Ais, who is a traditional Tantric Hatha Yoga and meditation teacher, an integrative physiotherapist, and a somatic facilitator, an educator, and a beautiful human being. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for that warm welcome.
You're very welcome, of course. So, I was fortunate enough to complete my 300-hour yoga teacher training with you called The Great Return to Love, and it has deeply impacted the way that I teach and I share yoga, and it's also deeply impacted my own personal life so much. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. And I think a really nice place to start, if you would be willing to describe your personal relationship with meditation and how your practice has evolved over time.
It's such a beautiful question. I think that meditation brings me back to me. Like I'm more me after I meditate. I think I'm someone who's passionate and my inspiration takes me in lots of different directions, but often that attention takes me out of myself into the world where I'm working with other people or running trainings or whatever I'm doing. And those moments in the day where you close the eyes and turn the attention inward and your awareness starts to become more expansive as the mind settles down, the nervous system settles down, is just really precious time. I think it used to be about growth and evolution, and of course it still is, but I think that I'm taking time for me each day, and I know that there are so many positive byproducts, but I think as I'm reflecting in this moment, it's really just, I emerge more me.
And I'm particularly curious, like which practices, lineages have influenced the way in which you practice meditation.
Yeah. I think I started practicing when I was like 17. I'm 41 now. And yoga was really asana for a really long time. And probably, and I was practicing meditation intermittently in those experiences. But I think I really started a daily practice some 10 years later. And it was Vedic meditation that really pulled me in, I think, because it was a standalone practice that has a lot of complementary practices around the foundational mantra practice. But it was so effortless, as anyone who's practiced would know. That's often how it's described. And it was an opportunity to just take some time to turn in and de-excite in a way that I probably hadn't experienced in the very asana-heavy yoga that I practiced for the first 10 years that I was doing contemplative practices. And then I was practicing Vedic meditation for years, and I started doing more and more study in the Tantric Hatha lineage, specifically the Srividya lineage. And in Tantric Hatha, it's also mantra-based meditation. I mean, mantra meditation, I would argue, is inherently tantric. And no doubt many styles of Vedic, meaning from the Indian subcontinent, meditations have mantra in it, not just tantra. But I started practicing not only a practice that allowed you to drop into these deep states of quiet and then to use a mantra to go deeper, but that had specific kriyas and specific practices that you would do before deepening into a more effortless meditation that support your nervous system in whatever it needs, whether it's a kriya to clear stuckness, whether it's a kriya to bring more awareness to a specific energy center.
Can you touch on what Kriya is for people listening?
I think the broadest definition would be a clearing practice. But in truth, Kriya doesn't only clear our system, but it accelerates certain experiences or expands certain experiences. So I think an example is like a heart Kriya. A heart Kriya is a practice where we gather attention and energy around the heart, and not only will it clear anything that feels stuck around the heart, but it also starts to build that experience of prana here, and therefore expand and accelerate any positive experiences that we can touch at the heart.
Yeah. I'm curious as well, because your journey went from a transcendental technique to something more somatic. Like the journey of transcendence is often described as up and out, and somatic more so in and down. Like, how do you speak to that? Or
It's funny because I see tantric kriyas as transcendent still. There's just maybe a few more stages. And I know that beyond the foundational practice of Vedic meditation, there are then additions to your mantra and extensions and certain techniques that I would call kriya techniques that go along with more advanced practices in the Vedic meditation style. So I think they're probably more similar than on face value it seems, but I see kriyas as something that in Hatha Yoga, because it's the system that moves through the body, I think maybe that's the delineation for me, that Vedic meditation, in my understanding of it, really leans heavily into the Vedas, into the Upanishads, and is using the mind as the vehicle for transformation. Whereas I would say Hatha Yoga more broadly is using the body as the vehicle for transformation, and therefore your central channel and the energy centers along that channel are what we're focusing on clearing and activating and enlivening. And so we do that work first in the body, and then that awareness becomes more and more subtle, that we're ending in the same transcendent place, but the pathway is different.
Of course. And I remember you always said there's so many pathways to the same recognition and same realizations. Yeah. Why is it for you that like a Hatha practice has been so potent, and maybe describing how Hatha is perhaps a little different to what most people experience in studio?
You know, in part, I think I fell into it, just being very athletic at school, being a physio. I think the body is always something that I was working with and interested in and was good at guiding people into because of all the work that I'd done. And so I think it was my medium, but at the same time, I think we are embodied, and it's so easy already these days to be in our phones and to be in our minds and to kind of have these ideas of what life is meant to be like, but what is happening right now in this moment. I think we're always in the future or the past. And so what I love about Hatha Yoga is that it brings you into presence, because the body is always here in this moment. And I think also the body is accessible. Like it's hard to change our mind.
Totally.
But I think to bring your awareness into the body and to notice, you know, to use a very familiar expression that the body keeps the score, to be able to take our attention into the body and start there, I think it's great. And when we look at complete practices, and of course I'm speaking from my own perspective, different lineages might have different thoughts on this, but for me a complete practice is one that prepares you for meditation. And I think there's great benefit for many of us who have busy minds, who are feeling distracted, to start with a physical practice that grounds the mind in the present, moves energy and things that are stuck and allows distraction to dissolve into presence, uses some pranayam to expand that experience of energy or awareness.
Pranayam being breath techniques.
Breath techniques, exactly. And then creates the conditions where meditation becomes even more effortless.
Yes.
And so I think when we look at Hatha, that's the map that Hatha offers us. You start in the body, you progress to the breath, and then it's much easier to be effortlessly present in your experience in meditation. Like that part becomes easier. And so I like the completeness of that practice, that it not only supports physical health and energetic health, but it then makes meditation easier. And that's been really true in my experience as someone who has a mind that loves the dopamine hit of novelty and can wander. I like that when I've done a full Hatha practice, I sit down to meditate and I experience much more depth often in those moments. And so, you know, to speak to the question about Hatha Yoga, how is it different to a regular public class? Hatha Yoga is broadly just the umbrella term for all physical forms of yoga, as opposed to karma yoga or bhakti yoga, the yoga of service or devotion, which don't have any poses at all, but are still considered yoga practice, or jnana yoga, which is about philosophy and meditation. Hatha Yoga really centers the body and uses the body as the vehicle, as we spoke about before. And yeah, these days we call Hatha Yoga like a slower form of yoga that is like not vinyasa, which is a more dynamic flowing style. But we could argue that all physical forms of yoga are Hatha, but that traditionally Hatha was Tantric. Once Tantra emerges much later than the Yoga Sutras, later than the Upanishads, when the first systems of yoga are being revealed, then comes Tantra, which is quite contemporary, and then comes Hatha. So this idea of Tantra using the body and the energy systems in the body or the meridians, the Hatha system then emerges from that philosophy. So I'm a bit of a traditionalist in that, or what I love about Tantric Hatha Yoga is that it takes us back to these original forms of practicing yoga with the body. And so texts like the Hatha Yoga Pradipika and the Granda Samhita, they're the real handbook for physical yoga.
Yeah, I love it. And it makes so much sense because it's a lot easier to control what your hand is doing than what your mind is doing, to control what your breath is doing than what your thoughts are doing. And so it's so beautiful to see the body as a vehicle. I'd love to hear you speak, and you kind of already have, to how yoga and meditation, like the intersection between them, because I think many people see yoga as asana, which is the physical postures, but all of it ultimately, like you said, is leading to meditation.
Yeah, like in truth, yoga is meditation. In the
Synonymous.
and you know that in the sense that the true definition of yoga is a state of presence where we are here and at ease. And that is true whether you're in an asana or whether your eyes are closed in a seated pose. So they're one in the same. And in truth, we could use them interchangeably. But because modern yoga has become so asana focused, where you can also do a physical pose and be totally distracted and angry at yourself and judging everything you're doing, you can practice meditation that way as well, right? So I think if we talk about this map of the complete pathway that Hatha Yoga offers, then meditation is the final stage. Or we could be sticklers for language and say all of yoga is meditation, that it's just about the cultivation of awareness. But one thing we haven't said is these days science is acknowledging the mind-body. We're not talking about the mind as separate to the body. We're not saying that there's a mind-body connection. We're saying they're part of a continuum. And so I think what I'm moving towards is it doesn't matter if you start in a seated practice. It doesn't matter if you start with physical postures. All of that is turning you inward and allowing you to connect to yourself, allowing you to gain more awareness of yourself. And we have access to all of those ways of doing that. So I think I'm more inclusive and sort of permissive these days to say, like, it's all yoga and we've got all these different pathways or entry points into the practice. And in my opinion, if you do all of that together, perhaps we could go even deeper, or it can be even more effective.
Absolutely. I love that. And they are synonymous, but this is language and it gets confusing for a lot of people. And even in like somatics, because soma means body and so much of your work is somatics. And when people think of meditation, they think of the mind. And obviously, like you just said, the two are inextricably linked. How do you teach meditation through a somatic lens?
Yeah. So an example, maybe that would be useful. So like the 3 pillars of somatic practice are really to be able to ground and orient and resource. So when I'm in the clinic, meditation's not appropriate for everyone in terms of the way we might practice it, that you close the eyes, you allow your nervous system to de-excite, and then you introduce a mantra that starts to take you even deeper into being, whether you're doing a kriya before or not, or you're doing asana before or not. Lots of people that I work with in my clinical work who either experience pain and a lot of symptoms in their body, live with a lot of anxiety or other mental experiences, or live with the significant effects of trauma, that is a boundary of turning inward, means they're face to face with a lot of that, and it's deeply uncomfortable. Or even those of us who are more neurodivergent, like it might not be comfortable to be totally still in the body and to close the eyes and to just sit in that experience. So I find using more mindfulness-based or somatic-based techniques really useful in the clinical setting, and not just in the clinical setting, but that's where I use it most. And that might look like, okay, let's practice tuning in to the body and just noticing what's here. We don't have to zoom in and stay in, but we might titrate or pendulate, bringing awareness in and out, in and out. And so that might look like you can keep your eyes open or you can close them if that feels like a preference. Start to feel where your body meets the seat that you're in. Notice that as you do that, you feel that your body is always supported. Notice that the force of gravity is always drawing the body down, whether we're attuned to that or not. So just taking a moment to notice that. If it feels useful, let the eyes open and look around into the room again. And then again, returning to the body, maybe noticing that when we find where we are in space, we're fundamentally located or oriented. It's a tool for allowing us to be present, which doesn't involve closing the eyes and really watching what's happening in the mind. Which can be so triggering and exactly confronting. And then as we do that, we notice, okay, already when we ground and we come into presence, that's sending a message back to the brain. I'm safe and well in this moment. And so we can start to down-regulate, and it resources us or regulates us. So I guess that's how somatic practice is different to meditation, where we could argue it's the same thing. Again, just the cultivation of awareness that is more subtle, more present, more grounded.
And more trauma informed, because like that's held in the body, and so it's taking that into account rather than forcing your way inside.
There can be a lot of dogma around meditation, like it's a panacea for everyone. I want to propose, and it breaks my heart to acknowledge this, that meditation isn't for everyone, or maybe not yet for everyone. Especially, for example, if someone was in psychosis, it's not necessarily useful to ruminate more on what's happening internally, or again, acknowledging when there's a lot of pain in the body. We can invite people into presence in that they can be present in the room. They can notice 3 things that are green in the room. They can notice and look at the textures of the walls in the room. And that can be a really powerful way to support some nervous systems that don't sort of require us to go deeper in if that's not safe for now. And my deepest hope is that when I'm working with people, we can get to that place where they can do practices like yoga nidra and transcendental meditation, but I know it's not always useful for everyone.
And it's so true. It's nothing you can say safely is for everyone. Like that's a grand statement in itself.
And that's being trauma-informed and neuro-affirming. Like trauma-informed practice is not just for people who've lived with trauma. Neuro-affirming practice is not just for neurodivergent people. It means we all live on a spectrum where our brains are all different. We've all experienced challenges and moments that might impact our sense of safety, and how can we meet the individual in front of us so that they feel most safe, so that they're given these tools that will ultimately support their nervous system, but in a way that meets what they're ready for.
Exactly. And you also teach mental health first aid, and you said on the weekend you taught Swami's mental health first aid.
I got to go to an ashram.
It's amazing. I'd love to hear the role meditation you feel plays in a way that actually benefits people as well from that perspective.
In supporting our mental health?
What you've seen.
So because I work across the spectrum from like clinical practice or pathology all the way through to I'm lucky enough to feel safe and well in my body, in my mind, in myself, and I want to keep deepening in that connection, or I want to keep deepening in my experience of consciousness. There's a spectrum in that. And so I think meditation in the more clinical space can be really powerful if it's tailored to help people regulate, to help people practice coming into presence, to help people practice tuning in and connecting to themselves, like that most baseline state that is required for healing. Like we need to learn how to create the conditions for the parasympathetic nervous system to activate, and they can be tiny things, whether it's feeling your hand so that you're like, oh, my hand is here in this moment, feeling your body in the seat. Tiny things that we could say are precursors to meditation or are helping create the conditions for that to happen. And when we start to be able to tolerate a few minutes of either eyes open or eyes closed, mindfulness or presence, already we're on our way. We could argue your awareness is expanding and you're dropping into presence, and that's meditation.
Yeah.
But in truth, when we feel safe and able to close our eyes and transcend, or, to use language which is more universal to allow our awareness to become more and more subtle, to eventually deepen until we meet the subtlest form of our awareness, just this experience of beingness, and that's very Vedic or transcendental language. For me, that's one of the most profound ways that we can effortlessly impact our whole system.
Yeah.
Like that sense of I'm safe and well, we're going into that place of, I'll speak subjectively now because we probably can't use any language that's totally universal, but often I hear this from students, and I know I felt this a million times. It's like in this place I hit this center where it's free of pain, it's free of worry, it's free of disconnection. And I don't mean bypassing all of that. I'm all of the things that are hard about living. I mean like we access that place that is innately so content and safe and at ease, that we remember that part of ourselves. And then we go back into the challenges and the dramas of the world, and maybe we have more perspective.
More
capacity. Maybe we can move with more love and more ease towards all the things that feel challenging. Whereas when we're in the world, and look, there's beauty in the world and tremendous, tremendous good. And there's also so much awful stuff that we tend to see on our screens every day. If we don't get a moment to tune in and feel this untarnished goodness, I think life can get pretty overwhelming.
Totally, yeah. There's such a need for the mental health first aid, and so many people are familiar with first aid, but the mental health aspect of it, is it actually like something that many people have to do or do, or is it actually just the minority?
I mean, I wish that every single person on the planet did this. I mean, how many times are we having to deal with jellyfish stings, like in Australia, maybe in summer? But like, how often is someone we know feeling anxious? And do we have the tools to lean in rather than just pretend we don't see that, and to say, hey, is it okay if I say you don't seem yourself today? Just want to check in. Is everything okay? Like, this is a course that teaches us about anxiety, depression, substance use or abuse, and psychotic illness, and what that looks like, what that feels like, and most importantly, not how to diagnose people, because that's not our role, but to be able to lean in and just say, hey, I'm a bit concerned about you. Is it okay if we have a chat?
Yeah, to develop the language, to have the conversations.
And I use that every day of my life, not just when I'm talking to someone who I think has anxiety, but every day I use that language to like check in on people in my life, because like the punchline of that course is that, the earlier we have a conversation, the more people can feel supported. And when we feel supported, we do better.
Yeah.
And when we feel isolated and unsupported, our mental health worsens. And the later we leave that before we're accessing help, the more complicated it is to find that pathway back towards feeling ourselves again.
Yeah. It's such incredible work that you do. It's so needed in the world.
I mean, it's an accredited course, I want to acknowledge, not mine. It's like literally like being a physical health or a physical first aid instructor. But I think my point of difference is I'm really passionate about teaching yoga meditation teachers and health professionals to be mental health first aid trained. It's a bit of a mouthful, because we're not great at it.
Yeah.
We're not great at that. I think something we haven't acknowledged, which I'm really passionate about, is people who care for others being embodied and regulated and compassionate. And that's probably more common in yoga meditation teachers, but also, like, what does it mean these days to be a yoga meditation teacher? We can do a course, does that shape our embodiment? It does, but to what degree? It's different in every person. We've all had differing amounts of practice and even years on this planet before we become teachers and guides. And for health professionals, I mean, I don't know that that's a prerequisite at all.
Yeah.
And so people are caring for others, supporting them, and their nervous systems have all the stress and distraction and fatigue. And so how do we support other people when we know we're co-regulating,
Yeah.
whether we're trying to do that or not? So you come into a room with a health professional or a yoga teacher or a meditation teacher even who has some skills, but what's happening in their system? Like my old teacher used to always say, be the Purusha in the room or be the soul in the room.
That's so beautiful.
And there's some work in that of how do we show up to those service roles. And so I think some of that is being mental health aware and trauma informed.
Yeah.
Some of that is really working on our own nervous system and our own presence, not just the skills or the techniques that we're teaching other people.
Yeah. It's reminded me of a sequence you shared in our yoga teacher training, which I think is tantric: awareness into power into action. Would you like to speak on that? Because it's incredibly powerful. And also I'd love to circle back and hear you describe tantra like that as well, and how that informs everything you teach.
I think awareness, power, action is something that I use like in mentoring or when I'm working one-on-one with people, because lots of people practice techniques to expand their awareness, and that's a lifelong journey. There's no end to this idea of, okay, now my awareness is expanded enough. But where Tantra is different to yoga, if yoga is the cultivation of awareness, then Tantra is the cultivation of power. And we can speak more to Tantra, but the cultivation of power. And so it's mind and energy.
Yeah.
And so in my experience, when we work on both, not just cultivating awareness, because awareness without power can be ineffective, but power without awareness, we see that all over the world.
Danger.
Lots of very powerful people, who are selfish or violent. So awareness and power, these two powerful or potent qualities to cultivate, and some of us might need more of one than the other.
Yeah.
And that ultimately that will mean we can move and act in the world with most purpose and compassion and potential. And so some people might need all three, or really need to work on all three. And some people may have a lot of awareness and power, but what are they doing with that in the world? And mentoring and one-on-one sessions are really centered around, like, what do you desire to create, to experience, to embody? And do we need to cultivate more power in order to do that? Or more awareness? You might be really powerful and ready to go, but can you have the awareness of what's needed for you or for what you're doing? So I guess I want to propose that yoga isn't just about the techniques and technologies. Yoga is about action. It's about how embodied we are and what we're doing in the world. It doesn't matter if you can do Trikonasana if you're kind of an asshole.
Totally. Yeah. And like you said before, like the nth degree of hatha maybe is to sit with yourself, but it feels like tantra is to come back out into the world. Is that a fair way to describe?
I love that directional. I'm seeing that awareness as like sort of really tuning into yourself, even though we could talk about awareness expanding.
Yeah.
Because when I think about the koshas, we kind of, or these layers of being, we can look at it as the deepest layer, tuning in or out. But power is really about amplifying, like more power. And awareness is also about amplifying. But I see that sense of like expansion feeling like an out.
Like expansion into yourself as hatha, and then expansion out into the external world, perhaps.
Actually, you asked about tantra. The word spanda is a very tantric word, and it means the pulse of the universe, or the pulse of life, that we're always expanding out and coming back in, or life has moments that are expansive and moments that contract you, and that actually that's a rhythm that is happening not only on a cellular level and on a cosmic level, but within the individual as well. And so Tantra is really a practice of energy and subtlety. In terms of a worldview, it acknowledges that all of life is sacred, and that is true, full stop. that we don't have to transcend to have that experience, that it is in the smile on a child's face, or the beauty in a flower, or watching the sunrise. Like all of that is an absolute miracle. And it's the quality of our awareness that doesn't acknowledge that day to day. And so in tantric practices, rather than it just being a worldview of life is sacred, life is special, life is beautiful, Tantra acknowledges that we work on our own awareness so that we can see that. As we look around, we're acknowledging that every day because we're not missing it, we're not ignoring it. And we can remember that within the core of our own being, or as the tantric tradition acknowledges, we can also see it all around us. So what I love about that too is if I'm working with someone who for many reasons is not ready to turn in, they can meditate on a flower. And that can be a profound practice of seeing beauty and awe, which can allow us to perhaps see that in ourselves. So we can begin with ourselves, and that shifts the way we look out into the world, or we can begin with the world, and that shifts the way we see our place in the world.
What's like the Tantric Hatha lens of the mind, like how it's described?
I guess in Tantric Hatha, we acknowledge that we need to cultivate witnessing capacity as one of our first qualities. That asana is actually really seen as preparation for the path of Tantric Hatha. That we do some poses, we get a little stronger, we might build a little bit of steadiness, theta, and a little bit more ease, sukha, which prepares us to actually do the work of entering the mind. And then we want to be able to cultivate not only stability in the mind, but calmness in the mind. And as we do that, then that witness starts to dawn a little bit, where you can watch your mind without one knowing that that is the whole of you. It's an experience or a part of you. And you can watch it without reacting. Like if I think about the Yoga Sutras, which is not technically a Hatha text, it's a Raja Yoga text, but it says, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, one of the most quoted Yoga Sutras ever. And it's often translated as like, yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind, like your mind will be still. But actually it's that you're able to observe the movement of mind without feeling like you're pulled on those waves. And so I would say that that's the focus of Hatha Yoga, that to cultivate that witnessing capacity. And that when you can do that, when you can be seated in an unchanging part of yourself and watch all that changes, your body's always changing, your breath, your mind, the world around you is always changing, but there's a part of you that is unchanging. I would say that that's what Hatha focuses on.
Creates real stability regardless of what is happening externally, circumstances and conditions.
My teacher used to always say, steady amidst turbulence and stable despite change.
So good. And your training was called The Great Return to Love, which I know you might not be teaching again, but obviously that phrase has deep meaning for you. I'd love to hear you speak on how all these things, essentially, the key teaching is it's a return to love.
I think I ran that training just after the COVID years. And I think when COVID happened, this isn't going to be a long side quest to answer your question, but when COVID happened, I was traveling around the world teaching yoga and meditation trainings. I was living my dream life. And then that became irrelevant overnight. COVID happened. I was meant to be overseas the whole of 2020 teaching trainings. And I came home to Melbourne and was living at my mum's house. And I remember sitting and meditating in the morning and the ether feeling so spacious, just everyone was in lockdown, and asking myself, what now? Like, what is important now? And I meditated so much in those times. Like, I wasn't one of those people that put out a lot of yoga classes and things during that time. I really sat with this grief of what I thought was most important in the way I was teaching yoga with my then teaching partner kind of dissolved, and is there something new that's needed? And I sat and I sat and I sat with that. I ran free like group meditations online, and that's all I really did in that time. And I think what I realized is that action piece of, yeah, I had a lot of awareness and power. I'd been practicing yoga for some 20 years and Tantra more recently, but I'd done so many practices that built awareness and power. But what did I pour that into? Like, what was the work that I was doing? And I got to really, sit with that and my embodiment and what mattered, and the people around me in my life. And I think I realized that I wanted to come back, and it's such a cliche idea almost, and such a simple idea of so many spiritual teachings, like to come back to the heart. And I even have a post-it note like above my desk that says "from here," and it's just a love heart. And I started meditating on that a lot. This idea of we can practice yoga every day, but do we really move from love? It's such a simple idea that hopefully I'll come back to at different times in my life, many, many times. And so the training was sadhana, practice, dharma, purpose, and seva, service, the great return to love. That I think sometimes in our modern yoga world, we can be really good at asana and we can hold our breath for a long time and maybe we even meditate, but why are we doing those things? Are we doing them to tick it off the list? Are we doing it so we can say we're good at it, which is feeding the ego more? Or is it softening our hearts? Is it expanding our hearts? Is it dropping our awareness into our heart? And actually in the tantric path that I follow, we work through the third eye and the heart and the navel center, but this is where the soul is said to reside, in like a cave in the heart. It's often depicted as a flame or a pearl or a light. And I was meditating on that a lot in those days in lockdown, just this sense of coming back to the light in the heart. So that's what the training was. I guess it was an invitation to, why are we doing what we're doing, especially at a 300-hour level. At a 200-hour, you learn more about yogic techniques, about how to teach them. And this 300 hours, and why are you doing all of that?
Would you say a natural outcome to a tantric hatha practice is an expansion of love, the universal kind, not the romantic?
I hope so.
Yeah, it seems
I hope
to be.
so. I remember my old teacher used to say that his teacher, he'd walk through the garden with him and his wife, and they'd stop to marvel at every flower, and just see the beauty in everything. And I want to be like that.
I feel like you are like that.
Well, there's lots I want to do in the world, but I get swept up in rushing and doing and creating, and do I pause to appreciate enough in my friends and lovers and whoever is in my life, my students, my clients, do I really slow down and am I sitting with the beauty of the people around me and the world around me? I keep being initiated into that. I keep noticing that I'm rushing all the time. So I think in this chapter or season of my life, I'm really turning towards not slowing down even in the literal sense, because my work-life balance, even though I do lots of different things, I live in a beautiful home on land. The work that I do is very aligned, but I'm constantly inviting myself to be present in new ways. Not just, okay, I'm present, I'm here, but what am I noticing in that presence? What am I doing with that presence? And I hope that that's true for everyone that I have the privilege of working with, that one of my favorite containers is a mentoring container, because you get to ask that question, what does your heart desire? And often there are things we want for ourselves, but there probably is an evolution of and what do I want to give? What do I want to offer? We're sitting in this beautiful home that I've just bought on 5 acres of land, and there's this contract of, okay, I've become a custodian of this land. I'm going to learn so much, and I want to offer, and I want to build a legacy on this land. I want to plant more trees for birds to be in, and so I think slowly yoga has done the work of helping me cultivate more power and awareness in myself, and it's given me so much.
Yeah.
And maybe that's my age of like having lived half a life now, and maybe it's the yoga practice working, but I feel like my purpose is shifting a little bit. I keep shifting every day because I do a practice every day. Yes. I'm kind of less focused on what am I wanting to be.
Yeah.
That keeps just revealing itself, but I am really focused on what do I want to create, like that will support other people, that will support the country that I'm on.
Because it sounds like you're doing so many things, but they're all coming from this like heart-led action essentially. So it's almost as though there's an infusion of being and doing, because being doesn't mean doing nothing. You're doing things, but from a place that's infused with aligned action.
Yeah, and you and I were talking before about like having a project of our own versus working with others and for others. And I think there's so many things I love doing.
Yeah.
Like I do have a lot of passion and I do like variety in my work. But it's taken years to refine of like, okay, this is the container that I pour my heart into. And like these days, that's the bridge in terms of my yoga school, and Limber in terms of the clinical education program or platform, and my clinical work. Like in a way, it feels really clear where everything sort of fits. But it took ages for me to work that out, because sometimes I'd get pulled into other people's ideas and visions and be like, yeah, I want to feed that. And yeah, finally I feel like there's real clarity around the containers that I pour into, and they all feel really related.
That's so good. I think a final question, it's kind of a big one, so take it in any direction you like. But I would love for you to touch on, and you said it, that the method used in the 300-hour training was to touch on sadhana, dharma, and seva. Maybe explaining like what each are and just why they're so pivotal in the path of transformation.
Yeah, I think it kind of parallels what you named before in awareness, power, and action. Like I think we can be really self-aware again, but not really know where we're headed, what our purpose is, and therefore how what we do ripples out in positive ways. It's this kind of, I see it as like the individual can cultivate awareness, and that's what your practice is for. You're refining the way you see. It's fundamentally selfish first, and I don't use that word in a negative sense, in that your practice enhances how you see yourself, who you are. It supports your body and your mind, your health. And so as you're doing that, you can start to get a little clearer on what you desire and maybe what your purpose is. And so that's the dharmic bit of, there are so many people who I know who've been practicing yoga for a long time, and when they come to mentoring, the question I ask them is, what do you desire to create, to embody, to experience? And often we don't know the answer to that. And so the dharmic piece is not just, I'm doing a practice, tick. And what is it revealing? Like, what are you desiring? Where is it taking you? Is it revealing that there is a path that when we look retrospectively, it's, I was always meant to teach yoga, or I was always meant to be a physio, or I was always meant to live on this land and, learn about nature and land and country. When we get to a place, we realize, oh, perhaps I've been really meandering my way to this place, and I was always going to arrive there, but how long did it take me? So Tantra is also a path of, shortening the distance between where
Catalyst
you are now
evolution.
and where you want to go. As most yogic traditions or Vedic traditions would probably acknowledge that that's what it does. And so you do your practice, and most importantly, you find what is the unique practice that you need in this moment. Public classes are beautiful, but fundamentally limited in that yoga is inherently therapeutic. It's designed to meet you where you need to be mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, energetically. So you find your unique practice.
Sadhana.
You use that to cultivate your awareness and to build more power, to reveal your dharma. And as you're living more of that dharma, and sometimes that's a painful process of having to walk away from certain things that are actually not aligned, if we use that kind of language. until ultimately, hopefully the work that you're doing or the thing that feels purposeful is so coming from your heart that you would do it if you made no money. And you see that it has an impact, you see that it's of service. And I think that can be true with whatever we're doing, because I don't want it to sound like I'm implying you have to be giving all your work away for free or it has to be charity work. Actually, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that I'm picking this example out of thin air, but let's say you work as an architect and you're creating houses for people, but what if you're really engaged in the way you connect with the person and connect with the landscape, and the homes that you create are energy efficient and support nature and support the individual and are a work of creativity that feed your own heart? That's it. And so whatever we do, whether we sell something or whether we share something, whether it's a service or a thing, the quality of attention that we bring to it, whether it fills you up and whether it supports others, I think that's the path. And there's no right and wrong with that. It's just, does it feel like it brings you joy? Does it feel like it supports others? Are you proud of the work that you do?
Yes.
And I don't know that we can all answer yes to all of that.
And I think for so many people, it's not obvious, Dharma, and it can take a long time to find it. What would be your best advice in getting clear?
Yeah, when we think about Dharma as purpose, as though like bang the drums, I've arrived at my life's purpose, it can feel pretty intimidating. But if we see Dharma as moment to moment right action, I think it chunks it a little bit and it says, okay, what am I doing today? And do I feel proud of that? What choice am I making in my business or in where I want to share yoga or in which class I'm going to teach today at the studio? I think when we look at Dharma as, not just duty and purpose as the myths kind of share, which can be a bit dramatic, but just as action, purposeful action, then we get to make a choice. Am I moving towards consciousness or away from it? All through our lives. And so the 300 hour was really an invitation to kind of marinate in all of those questions. As people who were mostly yoga teachers who did that, or people who are practitioners who are really devoted to their practice, of why do you do this thing called yoga? Like, we know it's good, but why do you do it? And why does it matter? And what is the impact that it has? Because we're having an impact whether we're choosing to do something or not. It's rippling out from us. So can we shape that and guide that meaningfully and purposefully? Hell yeah, we can. The whole system is about that.
Yes.
But we miss it sometimes because, a lot of yoga trainings focus a lot on technique.
Yes.
And that's important. Technique is the methodology that cultivates that awareness and power we've been talking about. But, and then, I almost think our 300 hours like the and then you've got the rest of your life to do more techniques, to keep cultivating awareness, but where are you pouring that energy? Have you ever asked that question?
It's so good. I love how you package like the whole yoga system into something that like you take out into the world and just like let your heart pour into everything you do. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much for this whole conversation and sharing all your wisdom.
Yeah.
Is there any way if people want to work with you or do trainings or one-on-ones, what's the best way?
Yeah, so I work with people one-on-one as an integrative physio. So that's people who are living with persistent stress, pain, hypermobility, trauma. I work one-on-one in terms of yoga therapy and mentoring with people. And a lot of that is with health professionals, yoga teachers and practitioners. And then I run trainings. So
when's the next one?
Yeah, we've got a training coming up, which is a 200 hour and a trip to India in October. But all of that's on my website. So it's just ireneais.com.
I'll link it as well. Thanks so much, Izzy.